It began, like so many cult stories do, not with violence, not with fire and chains, but with hope. It began with questions like, who am I really? What's holding me back? How can I live without fear? And into those vulnerable questions walked a man named Keith Raniere, offering certainty wrapped in charisma, control disguised as wisdom, and destruction branded as personal growth. This is the story of how Sarah Edmondson, a Canadian actress and believer in personal empowerment, walked willingly into a self-help empire and barely made it out with her soul intact. In August 2017, Sarah walked into a modest health clinic in Albany, New York. She wasn't scared. She wasn't under duress. In fact, she was excited. She believed she was about to become part of something bigger than herself, a secret sisterhood, a sacred ritual that would bind her to a community of women who were redefining strength, loyalty, and female empowerment. They told her the branding would hurt, but that the pain was symbolic, like birth or baptism. What they didn't tell her was the truth. As the hot, cauterizing pen burned into her lower abdomen, held down, without anesthesia, the smell of her own flesh filled the room. She clenched her teeth, trying not to scream, still believing it was worth it. She'd been told it was a symbol of the elements, a small glyph of meaning. But once it was over, once she looked closer, she saw it. Two initials, intertwined. K.R. Keith Raniere. This wasn't empowerment, it was ownership. She'd just been branded, literally, as the property of a man she had been told was a genius, a philosopher, and a godlike figure of ethical purity. In that moment, everything she thought she knew about NXIVM crumbled. NXIVM had once looked legitimate. It hosted executive success programs across the country. It attracted actors, entrepreneurs, even members of wealthy elite families. On the surface, it was nothing more than an upscale self-help organization, but behind the scenes, it was a mind control factory, quietly indoctrinating vulnerable people with twisted ideologies, all under the direction of one man, Keith Raniere, who demanded to be called Vanguard. He didn't yell, he didn't threaten, he didn't need to. He spoke softly, always smiling, always listening. He told you that fear was a sign of growth, that suffering was a tool, that obedience was freedom. And if you were broken, lost, or just curious enough, it sounded profound. Sarah had fallen for it completely. She joined NXIVM in 2005. She rose through the ranks, became a high-level coach, and even ran the Vancouver chapter. She brought in dozens of friends, peers, and young women looking for purpose. But all of that changed the moment she entered DOS, an elite, secret society inside NXIVM. They didn't tell her what it really stood for. Dominus Obsequious Sororium, master over the slave women. She was assigned a master. She was required to give collateral, nude photos, personal secrets, even financial documents. She was told to check in via text at exact hours, to fast, to sleep less, to answer yes, master, with no hesitation, and she was instructed to recruit other women into the group. But when she began to ask questions, when she saw how dangerously this resembled coercion, blackmail, and sexual slavery, she realized she wasn't part of a sorority, she was part of a cult. Sarah was furious, not just at Raniere, but at herself. She had brought people into this. She had recruited. She had worn the sashes. She had hosted the seminars. She had preached the philosophy. And now, she realized she'd unknowingly played a part in enslaving others. She could have stayed silent. She could have walked away and hoped no one ever found out. But instead, she went to war. She reached out to journalist Frank Parlato, an early whistleblower. Then she reached out to the New York Times. On October 17th, 2017, they published her story and, most chilling of all, the photo of her brand. That photo broke the internet. News outlets exploded. Former members came forward. Federal investigators took notice, and the hunt for Keith Raniere began. Raniere fled to Mexico, hiding out in a luxury villa with several women who still referred to him as Vanguard. They cooked for him, waited on him, protected him. He told them he was a victim, a martyr. But in March 2018, the charade ended. He was arrested, and with that arrest came a flood of testimony, lawsuits, and a courtroom circus that exposed every ugly truth NXIVM had buried for years. The trial in Brooklyn's Eastern District wasn't just a legal proceeding, it was a ritual of exorcism. One by one, survivors testified. They told of the manipulation, the brainwashing, the collateral, the starvation, the punishments, the sexual abuse. Women cried on the stand. Some still had the brand. Some hadn't seen their families in years. India Oxenberg, daughter of Dynasty actress Catherine Oxenberg, shared how she had nearly been lost forever. Her mother had to fight tooth and nail to get her out. Former NXIVM filmmakers like Mark Vicente and Bonnie P.S. shared never-before-heard recordings of Raniere. In one, he said, "Pain is how you know you're still weak." In another, "You don't deserve unconditional love unless you earn it." The more the world heard, the darker it became. Allison Mack, former Smallville star, was revealed to be one of Raniere's chief enforcers. She had personally recruited women into DOS. She helped design the branding ritual. She wept in court. But by then, the damage was done. On June 19, 2019, Keith Raniere was found guilty on all charges: sex trafficking, forced labor, racketeering, and more. In October 2020, he was sentenced to 120 years in federal prison. But the scars he left behind? Those won't disappear in a single verdict. Sarah Edmondson lives with hers every day, not just the brand on her body, though that remains, but the memory of how deeply she was fooled, of how easily trust can be manipulated, of how good intentions can be weaponized into control. She could have disappeared, but instead, she stepped back into the spotlight, this time not as a recruiter, but as a whistleblower. Her story was immortalized in the HBO docu-series The Vow, which used real footage, real recordings, and real pain to reveal how deep the rabbit hole went. We saw hours of actual NXIVM seminars, recordings of Raniere, emails, chants, rituals. We heard the voices of people who truly believed they were helping the world, while they were actually helping a sociopath build an empire of fear. And the most chilling part, some people still defend him, still wear their sashes, still speak of ethical frameworks and personal breakthroughs. Because when your identity is built inside a lie, the truth can feel like death. NXIVM wasn't just a cult. It was a mirror held up to our darkest vulnerabilities. It showed us how easily charm becomes control, how spirituality can become subjugation, and how people, smart, successful, educated people, can be branded like cattle while believing it was their idea. But Sarah's bravery lit a fire. Her brand became a symbol not of submission, but of survival. She proved that silence doesn't protect you, that truth, no matter how painful, is a weapon, and that when one woman stands up, it can bring down an entire empire built on lies. If this story shocked you, you haven't heard the half of it. We're just getting started. Subscribe now for more real crime stories, deep cult investigations, and the unfiltered truths they never wanted you to know. Because behind every smiling guru, behind every innocent self-help seminar, there might just be a predator in disguise. Stay smart, stay skeptical, stay subscribed, because you never know who's branding the truth.